morning, guys, and welcome to Bridge Church Online.
Good morning. I'm Kori.
And I'm Jono, and you're joining us for the next in our series on mental health and well-being.
You are indeed. We're really glad to have you with us this morning. We've got a lot lined up for you in a few moments to come. Really interesting interview and a talk a little bit later on by Lawrence on the subject of forgiveness. But first of all, before we move on to that, we have got a little quiz for you. Who said that? Quiz. So what we're going to do is we are going to read you a quote on the subject of forgiveness and you just have to guess who said it. Simple. Okay.
Apparently so.
Let's go for it. So, the first quote of the day. The weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is an attribute of the strong. Heard that one before?
No, I haven't actually. Who was it?
The answer is Gandhi said that one. Well done if you got that right at home.
The second one is, always forgive your enemies. Nothing annoys them so much. It's a good one.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Do you know who said it at home? Answer is?
Oscar Wilde.
There you go. Quote number 3. Let us forgive each other. Only then will we live in peace.
It's a good one.
It is. Sounds like it could be from the Bible, but it's not. It is, in fact, Tolstoy. Well done if you got that one.
So the next quote is, mistakes are always forgivable if one has the courage to admit them. Very thought-provoking.
Yes, indeed. Always forgivable.
And if you said Bruce Lee, you are correct at home.
Well done. Next quote. Forgiveness is the fragrance the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it. Any ideas?
Not me.
Got to be an author, that one. Way with words. The answer is Mark Twain. Next one.
Now you're going to have to forgive me for this. The next quote. Let it go.
Oh no.
Who was that?
Don't think I've ever heard that before.
Do I need to tell them the answer?
Of course.
That was Elsa from Frozen.
Hope you all got that one. Next quote. True forgiveness is when you can say thank you for that experience.
Wow.
That's quite a deep one, I think.
Wow.
So the person that said that one was Oprah Winfrey.
I would have done awful at these.
Yeah, me too.
So the next one is, forgiveness is not an occasional act, it's a constant attitude. And if you got that one right with Martin Luther King, then well done.
Well done indeed. How about, forgive your enemies, but never forget their names? No? That one was John F. Kennedy. And finally,
I asked God for a bike, but I know he doesn't work that way. So I stole a bike and asked for forgiveness.
I think I have heard that one before.
And it was
Al Pacino. How many did you get at home?
Did you get 10? I would have probably got 2, probably.
Well done, nonetheless.
So let's move on to the next part of our time together this morning, looking at forgiveness. And we are going to start with part 1 out of 2 parts of an interview which our leader of Bridge Church, Andy Buttress, did with Helen Starkey. Here's the first part.
So, hello, Helen. It's lovely to see you, and it's been really great to have you join us on Zoom over the last 12, 13, probably coming up for 14 weeks now. So, yeah, I don't really know too much about you. I know my daughter knows a bit more about you than I do. So, can you give us just a little potted history, some of the kind of the things that define you, some of the things that make you you?
Okay, so I'm a single mum of an 8-year-old daughter. I work as a teaching assistant at a Catholic academy. I work with Year 6 students. I have a little dog called Ditzy, who's a Cocker Spaniel, who I love taking out for walks. Contrary to my body type, I'm actually quite sporty. I enjoy theatre, music, going out with my friends, shopping, socialising, quite a social being. And I have found during lockdowns, Bridge Church to be invaluable. It's been really good for me, and Lectio and the people we've met have been amazing. The stories they've come out with and the talks that we've had on Sundays have been like a breath of fresh air, and almost, I don't know, sort of like food. They've sort of fueled me for the week, especially when I've had weekends or days and I've been a bit down. I've found the new connections have been really enlightening and really helpful to get me through the week. So thank you, Bridge Church.
Well, that's really good. And, you know, I think in many respects, you know, we've all found lockdown, you know, quite deflating in some ways. I think, you know, it's caused us to shrivel up a little bit, especially if we are this gregarious, outward going type of person. So I'm glad you benefited from all that. Just let us know, Helen, you say you're quite sporty. Kind of what kind of sports are you into?
Love tennis, any type of musical dance class, so a jazzercise, aerobic-cise, anything. Love swimming. Unfortunately, I've just heard the news it's going to be a little while before we can get back to all those things. But I'm the sort, I'll actually have a go at anything. The only thing I've not tried, I haven't tried bungee jumping, but I've tried gliding, parachuting. Well, I haven't been in a hot air balloon yet, but I've been in a helicopter. Have I done the seaplane? No, I haven't done the seaplane. I started to get my pilot's license. So I've been a little Cessna. I used to fly for British Airways, so I've been lucky enough to sit at the front on a 747, a 777, a 767, and the old-fashioned DC-10. So I suppose I'm a bit of an aircraft buff as well. And I've been lucky enough to travel around the world and see lots of sites around the world that I wouldn't have done if I hadn't done that job. And I've tried things I wouldn't have tried if I hadn't done that job. The encouragement of the other people around you sort of gears you on to have a go. So yeah, no, so I've been really lucky.
And so were you a pilot, a stewardess?
Yeah, stewardess, cabin crew on the worldwide fleet. So I started at Gatwick doing 4.5 years on long haul fleets. So we were nicknamed the Beach Fleet because we did most of the Caribbean and Seychelles. And then I went on to Heathrow and did 4 years there. So I got to see a lot of the Far East and America and Africa. And then I spent a couple of years in Dubai working in the business lounge and baggage services for British Airways. So yeah, so I've been very lucky in that I got to see lots of the world.
And now you're a teacher. Do you consider that an upgrade or or not? Do you love teaching?
I do. I love the children. I think teaching is actually something you shouldn't be allowed to come into till you are a bit older. I think you need life experience before you can go and help and educate others, because especially now, I think in the olden days when people used to be teachers, you didn't have so much of the social service side of things. And now your role is so much bigger. You have to do, you know, you're looking after a lot more than just teaching the children. You're looking after their whole being. So I actually think my life experiences have brought me to this place, and they help me do it and enjoy it. I mean, I was ready to do this, and I feel in a place that I can cope with it through everything I've done. I think to come into teaching straight from university or school must be terrifying, absolutely terrifying, because you just have this whole class of these either little or big faces looking at you, waiting readily for you to give them information. You know, and you're just like, oh, I've got my plan, off you go. I think it must be really scary. So I really admire any young people that come into it having not had any sort of working or life experience or children of their own, because you definitely have a different stance on children, I think, when you have them yourself. Because I definitely remember when I was single thinking, oh, I wouldn't be like that. Why do my friends all talk about poo and being sick and everything? And then as soon as you have them, that's when they're babies, that's your big conversation, is how much sleep you've had and nappies and things. So it's you know, I think my life choices help me, and I would say it is a step up. A step up, my opportunity to give something back.
Okay, well that's really great. I think we feel we've kind of got to know you through that little part of the interview. So what I will do, as I've done before, is to stop recording and come back to you in part 2, where we'll talk about the teaching series that we've been going through, which is mental health and well-being.
So thank you, Helen, for the first part of your interview, and we look forward to catching the rest of it, looking at forgiveness later on after our talk this morning.
Absolutely. But for now, it is time to listen to the talk. It's by guest speaker this morning, Reverend Lawrence Carey from Triangle Church in Ipswich, who we're really pleased to have speak to us this morning. So sit back, relax, grab your cuppa and have a listen to this.
Hi, Bridge Church. I've been asked to share a few thoughts on the F word, the one word that can really alarm people if it's not handled in the correct way. You see, sometimes when people talk about the F word, and perhaps sometimes when we are told that we should be using the F word or not, there can be a real dread and fear come over us. Why? How? Etc. Now, of course, the F word that I'm talking about is perhaps not the one you immediately thought of. Mine is forgiveness. So perhaps it would be good to actually look at the definition of forgiveness and what it actually means. When you put the word forgiveness into Google, you get a lot of different results. And I'm going to focus on three main things that are mentioned about forgiveness. One, forgiveness is the release of resentment or anger. Two, forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. One does not have to return to the same relationship or accept the same harmful behaviours from an offender. And three, forgiveness is vitally important for the mental health of those who have been victimised. So, what I thought would be the easy thing to do was use those three elements as the basis for what I want to share with you today. 1. Forgiveness is the release of resentment or anger. Now, it's worth saying at this point that the reasons for forgiveness are many and varied. One person can let an insult roll off them and not affect them at all, whereas another can have a similar thing said to them and it can be the end of the world and have the potential to destroy them. There's no scale of severity of things that can be done to us. As unique beings, we all react and respond in different ways and at different speeds to different situations. But why do we need to release that which has hurt us? A good illustration of this is a boil or an abscess. Now, they don't start off as big throbbing pockets of pus. They actually start off small and innocuous. A little bump, a little spot, a little something that just niggles. And it's when they're not dealt with promptly and properly that they become angry and poisonous and can cause us harm, such as when they eventually burst and they can cause more damage. Whereas if it's treated before that stage, it's a lot better for us. Equally, when we forgive, we have a sense of release, which is also good for us. 2. Forgiveness does not mean reconciliation. One does not have to return to the same relationship or accept the same harmful behaviours from an offender. Now, this is important. I also want to add another F in here, and that is that forgiveness does not necessarily mean forgetting. How many times do we hear forgive and forget? I personally feel that that's actually a bit of a misnomer. You can't say to someone that perhaps has a physical reminder of what has happened to them to forgive and forget. It's just not reasonable, just not fair. Just as in the same way you couldn't and shouldn't ask someone to seek reconciliation with someone who would cause them harm. Let me tell you a story. On the 14th of January 2003, PC Stephen Oak and colleagues went to a flat in the Crumpsall area of North Manchester as part of an immigration operation. The resident was not expected to be there, but the police actually found 3 men, including an illegal immigrant, Kamal Borjas. He was not perceived to pose a threat and thus was not handcuffed by officers. However, Borjas tried to escape, and in the process of doing so, he punched one officer, he kicked another, and then picked up a kitchen knife. PC Oak, who was unarmed and not wearing protective clothing, went to restrain the suspect. But then, in the scuffle, he was stabbed 8 times in the chest and upper body, including one blow which penetrated his heart. Sadly, PC Oak died later of his injuries. During a press conference, PC Oak's father, Robin, was asked how he felt about his son's killer. After a pause, he replied, "I forgive him." In an interview, reflecting upon the events of that press conference, he was asked about his response. His reply was this: "It took an awful long time to answer it, the question. I know the silence probably seemed longer to me than others, but I was praying. Lord, give me the right words to say here. And that's why I said, I forgive him." Sadly, Robin Oakes would have a permanent reminder of his loss. So how could he forget? Instead, Robin Oakes chose to forgive. It's worth noting that both Robin Oakes and his son were Christians, and they lived their lives accordingly, and Robin Oakes drew strength from that faith. You see, forgiveness is not just some platitude to be spoken, not just something that trips off the tongue. Forgiveness is meant. Forgiveness comes from the heart, and it involves a conscious choice to let something go and be released from its hold, bringing about the ability and the will to move on into something different and more wholesome. On the positive side, forgiveness can impact so many areas of a person's life, and in turn can affect others around that person as well. On the flip side, sadly, unforgiveness can also impact others, but not in a positive way. I once met a lady who told me that her husband would have nothing American in their house, or in fact in their lives. The reason, she explained, was that her son, who was a serving soldier, had been killed by friendly fire from an American platoon. Her husband's only way of processing his anger and his grief was to bury it deep within, and it manifested itself in an absolute hatred of anything American, and this included cutting ties with American friends that they had. The sad, very evident thing was that the impact of this was that this lady could not grieve for her son and move into a better place, as she was totally overshadowed by her husband's pain and unwillingness to forgive. Forgiveness is vitally important for the mental health of those who have been victimized. The act of forgiveness and the subsequent moving on is key to our well-being. We can get an indication of just how important this whole process is by looking at Jesus' response to a question about forgiveness in the Bible. We read in St. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 18, verse 21. At that point, Peter got up the nerve to ask, "Master, how many times do I forgive a brother or sister who hurts me? 7? Jesus replied, 7? Hardly. Try 70 times 7. Now I can just see Peter going, "Well, hang on a minute, that's 7 times that, and that plus that," and then now he's in his head, and then using his fingers, and he gets to his toes, and by the final part he goes, "Hang on, that's 490. Now I don't think that Jesus was saying, wait until 491, and then you can do what you want to your brother or sister who has offended you. Rather, I think that he chose such a large figure to illustrate just how important the act of forgiveness is to our well-being. Harboring anger and resentment leads the body to release stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Whenever that person comes to mind, those things are triggered. A steady stream of those chemicals can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, as well as dampening creativity and problem solving. Forgiveness offers many positive psychological developments, such as reducing unhealthy anger, repairing potentially valuable relationships, growing as a person, and exercising goodness in and of itself, no matter the response. But how do we forgive? Well, firstly, we need to acknowledge that forgiving is not easy. Like Robin Oakes, it must be a choice to forgive, not something done lightly. It comes from the heart, a realization that to move on, something needs to change. Once the choice is made, there are many ways of carrying out the act of forgiveness. Now, the Bible tells us to speak to whichever brother or sister has wronged us. This is not always an option, though, and other methods are equally valid. Writing down the details on a piece of paper with the person's name and whatever they have done, and then destroying that piece of paper through burning or shredding. The significance is that the release comes from letting it go. As Christians, we value the importance of prayer, bringing our hurt and our pain to Jesus. So whatever your thoughts on forgiveness are, I just want to end with this quote that I came across from a character in the TV series Blacklist, and with this I will finish. Forgiveness cannot change the past, but I believe it can change the future.
Thanks, Lawrence, for that talk this morning. Really interesting.
Absolutely, thank you so much. So before we go back to the second part of Helen's interview, sit back and watch this really powerful story of forgiveness with a man named Emmanuel.
My name is Parti Emmanuel, and I participated in the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. I murdered many Tutsi under the order of bad leadership, and have spent 6 years in prison and 4 years in community service. While in prison, fellow prisoners invited me to try Alpha. I went, but struggled to engage. I realized I needed to tell the truth about what I had done, and wrote a letter asking for forgiveness of the relatives of those I had murdered. Life was so hard after being released from prison. I found my wife with 2 children that were not mine, and I faced many heartbreaking situations. I didn't know how I was going to live with the genocide survivors after what I had done. My heart was filled with agony, loneliness, and fear. Encouraged by Alpha in prison, I decided to do Alpha again. I learned that Jesus forgives and experienced love in a way I had never known before. With the help of a local pastor, I went to find Vincent, whose mother and grandmother I had killed, to ask for forgiveness. I now live in a village built for genocide survivors and perpetrators. Vincent lives in the same village. We have formed a friendship, and I now experience peace like I haven't experienced it before. Day-to-day life continues to be a challenge, but I have found forgiveness and healing for the things that I have done. Got questions about life? Try Alpha.
What an incredibly powerful story brought to us by the Alpha team there. If you'd like to talk to anyone about what we've just heard or anything as part of this service, please do get in contact. There will be an email address that comes up on the screen, and we'd love to hear from you. Now it's time to go back to part 2 of the interview with Helen to hear what she has to say on the subject of forgiveness in her own life.
So yeah, we've been doing this series on mental health and well-being, and you've caught quite a few of those weeks. Have you kind of been able to get a bit out of that series? How have you found it?
Oh, I found it invaluable. It's been a really good way of getting to know everybody else at Bridge Church, and it's shown me the inner strength that some people have, the things that they've been through and how they come out the other side. It's given me the strength, I think, to come out as well with things that I've experienced to help others in my everyday life and friends around me. you do realize that sometimes you forget to sometimes ask the ones that you actually think are all right. You miss the signs. So having these talks, it's actually made me stop, look a bit deeper at people around me and think, are they really all right? And I've taken that extra time. I've definitely made sure more that I've said to someone, are you sure you're all right? Sent a message or a card or left a note.
Right.
And the days when I've had bad days, I thought, oh, actually, no, it's not that bad. I'm fine. I'm healthy. I'm happy. I have a roof over my head. I'm not poorly. I have a job, which a lot of people don't. It's made me think more about the positives than the negatives.
Good.
And find ways and strategies around things.
Yeah, I mean, that's really good. If it can, dealing with a subject which is often quite deep and, and emotional, if it can bring out real positives and this feeling of thankfulness and, and concentrating on the things that are going well, that's really good. But also to recognise that when things aren't, we're not the only one. There are other people going through the things that we're going through. This week, we're on the subject of forgiveness. Has forgiveness got any relevance to you? How do you approach that particular subject?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one for me. I had to learn this quite early on, unfortunately. I didn't have the best relationship with my father. And for a very long time, we didn't have any contact at all. Not really through my doing, more so through his. But then I didn't try and mend it because he'd broken the barriers too much for me to feel that I could make that first step. But unfortunately, about 10 years ago, he got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and skin cancer. I did know about it a few months before he died. I did actually think, right, maybe it is time to bury the hatchet, so to say, which is probably the wrong term to use, but I decided I would make the first move, even though I didn't feel it was my place to do so. I hadn't done anything wrong, but I did write to him and say that I forgave him and I was willing to make amends, that there'd been enough water under the bridge, and that really it was, at this time it'd be better for us to be at peace with one another and move on. Unfortunately, it wasn't reciprocated. I still to this day don't know how much was down to the person that he was living with at the time, whether he actually got the letter or not. I'm not to this day sure. My sister did try and get in the house and did try and speak with him, but he wasn't very forthcoming. So when he did eventually pass, I did have to sort of come to terms and sort of realize that sometimes you just have to forgive, even if it's not reciprocated. If you hold on to that negativity, it just eats into you and you end up being the one that's suffering, even though it's nothing you've done. But you can, when someone's not there to ask the question or find the answer, it's very easy to take the blame on yourself. So through, I mean, it took me a long time. I won't say it was a quick thing, but through my time, through all my life experiences, through that, through my relationship and my marriage breakdown, I found this inner strength and peace that if I do let things go, sort of this goodness comes in. It's a really weird way to describe it. I tried one time that I went out and I was really negative, and I thought, I'm just going to see how people react, because if I'm negative, what am I going to get back? And if you give off negativity, you get it back. But if you go off with a smile and you're each morning, hello, good morning, how are you, lovely day, you get that positivity back. But virtually all the time, there'll be the odd person that's possibly had a day, but on the whole, you get that positivity back. And I think forgiveness is the same. If you can bring it in yourself to give that forgiveness, that badness comes out and there's a goodness that comes in. I can't describe it. It is a godly thing. It's the only way I can feel it. That is my that's how I think I feel the Holy Spirit, is that when I let something really bad go, I feel like the Holy Spirit's then in me. It's come into me and it's let me get rid of all those bad things and take that higher step, take the step that God did with all of us, dying for us. He was persecuted. He had all these awful things done to him, and he still said, it's fine. It's okay. I do this for you. And I think it's one of the biggest things you can do as a human being. It's one of the hardest things to do. I'm not telling any of you it's easy. It's not. And I still find it hard. There's still things about it I find hard. And I will have, if I've had something bad, I'll have that odd day where I'll have my quietness. Kori and other friends that know will know. There's something wrong. I tend to go very quiet. You don't see or hear from me. I sort of go into my shell. But when I then think, actually, it's really not that bad. Come on, Helen, pull yourself together. Let that badness out again and let the good in. You feel so much better. You do feel so much better. And I think it's one of the biggest lessons that, God and the Bible can teach or give any of us is that gift of forgiveness. It's great when you receive it. It's equally hard when you don't, but you then have to learn to forgive yourself.
Well, thank you for that, Helen. It's interesting, your insights, and the fact that as humanity we are made to forgive. We have well-being when we are forgiving people, not resentful people. And I just think of the words of Jesus, when he died on the cross, that I think you're referring to there, when he said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do.
Yeah.
So even in his kind of hour of need, he was a forgiving person.
Yeah.
So thank you, Helen. That's been really insightful. Bless you. May God help you in your journey and in your life. And thanks for doing this interview. It's been great to get to know you a bit.
My pleasure.
Okay, take care. We'll catch you soon.
See you
Bye.
soon. Bye.
Thank you, Helen, so much for sharing your life story with us today. Sadly, that brings us to the end of the first part of our time here this morning. If you'd like to delve a bit deeper in prayer meditation, do join us in Zoom next.
Yes, and the login details for this should appear in the comments below, or they're on our website.
Yeah. Now, I know it's a pretty sad time at the moment. The Euro 2020 should have been going into knockout stages this weekend.
Never happy. You've got 92 Premier League matches on and you're still going on that there's not enough football.
At least we've got that to look forward to next year. And it's been such a hot week. I hope it cools down a bit for this week.
That would be nice.
Yeah, it would. But look, guys, have a great week. And if we don't see you in the next part on Zoom, have a great week. And we'll see you at the same place, same time next Sunday.
Have a good week. Bye.